These are some NBA pros who somehow still managed to peak in high school, starting with Brandon Jennings. Now, Brandon Jennings was once the embodiment of high school basketball greatness, a mixtape god whose every move felt like it was ripped straight out of 2K, a lefty out of Oak Hill Academy who made defenders look like pylons, and fans believed they were witnessing the second coming of Allen Iverson, just with a more pure jumper. Averaging a completely absurd 35.5 points, 7.5 assists, 5 boards, and 4 steals per game as a senior, Jennings didn't just dominate, he owned the high school scene, setting Oak Hill's single-season scoring record with 1,312 points and a record game-high 63 points in a single night. I mean, Oak Hill is the basketball powerhouse of the decade, and believe it or not, Brandon Jennings was no doubt the face of it. When it came to blowing by his defenders, no one could match his quickness. He found his teammates who were dominating the competition along with him, and he shot the ball efficiently at his size. For a smaller guard like this, it might surprise you to hear that he dominated in the way that he did if you weren't around for it, but Brandon Jennings' high school career was a straight-up movie. Just straight putting up performances that had gymnasiums packed and scouts buzzing. Just imagine showing up to math class the next morning after doing all this shit. That's gotta be the craziest feeling ever. This man was the kind of player whispered about at AAU tournaments, the little shifty guard with AI-esque handles who took ankles and kicked ass. Before he even touched the court, Jennings had millions of eyeballs on him, and everybody was literally praising this man to be the next stellar point guard of the big leagues. He's also known for being the first high school prospect to skip college ball to shock the basketball world by heading across the pond to play pro ball in Italy, a move literally unheard of at the time, which only added to his hype. This guy must have hated writing English essays, but I mean, it's understandable. Backpack across Italy playing the sport you love, or stay in America and do more algebra. What became pretty clear about Jennings is that he was about making as much money as possible and doing it right the hell now, which again is kind of hard to hate on. But when it comes to developing your game at the college level instead, sometimes the real riches come to those who wait. By the time the 2009 draft rolled around, Jennings was already seen as a more experienced prospect to some, and a little bit less heard to others. Having that overseas year under his belt, he was looked at as a no-doubt star at the high school level, but a question mark as a pro prospect. And not long after the Milwaukee Bucks picked him 10th overall in the draft, he had GMs and scouts thinking that they struck gold, since he exploded for 55 points in just his 7th NBA game in the league. Still one of the highest scoring performances ever by a rookie, and still to this day, he's the youngest player to score 50 when he just turned 20. I mean, this was pretty insane news for an era that played a much slower brand of basketball overall. I mean, if Cooper Flagg came out game 3 and dropped what would basically be 60 plus points in today's NBA, ESPN would have content for the next 47 years. Fans and analysts alike were ready to crown him as the next big thing. He ended up making all-rookie first team, dropped dimes, and could catch fire from deep like few other. But as the seasons rolled on, reality began to chip away at him. Jennings was undeniably talented, but never made an all-star team, and never could lead a deep playoff run, and was criticized for his 39% shooting and inconsistent decision-making. His best years hovered around 19 points per game with 6 assists, numbers that were solid, but not at all superstar or all-star level, and seemingly a bit empty the more you dug into them. And after a brutal Achilles injury in 2015, Brandon Jennings was essentially out of commission. The once limitless ceiling seemed to vanish, replaced by flashes of brilliance that were too few and far between. See, Jennings was talented, but the real stretches we got from him were on terrible Bucks squads who gave him all the shots in the world. While not being a great defender or advanced passer, Jennings was able to put up decent scoring totals around near 20 points per game for a very brief while before that Achilles tear that ruined him. But to be totally honest, there's a lot of NBA players you don't even think about that could put up 20 a night if they got the freedom to pull 17 shots. Still, Jennings never lost his confidence. His swagger stayed intact even as his minutes dropped, and that attitude eventually led to one of the more hilarious and petty beefs around the basketball scene: Brandon Jennings versus Jeff Teague and the rest of the 2009 NBA draft class. Jennings went on a podcast all cocky and declared that he was better than Teague and other solid guys from the 09 draft class like champion Drew Holiday. Teague wasn't talking shit. On Club 520, Teague shot back saying, "You were just more known than us, but everything you could do in high school, I could do. I could run, jump, shoot," before bluntly calling Jennings out for being inefficient and saying he was pretty much a loser his whole career.
I fuck with Brandon.
Yeah.
I think he in high school you probably was, but you were more known than us. I don't know. I ain't never played you. You were more known, but everything you could do in high school, I could do.
Yeah,
I could run, jump, shoot.
Yeah, you was spectacular, and you was in the LA. You know what I mean? He was all the way in Indiana. But
You had a bigger name in high school. You had a bigger name. You know, the AAU circus, whatever. You played all that. I didn't play AAU like that. I played local ball, we would say.
Yeah.
And you were good, and I'm not hating. But when we got to the league, bro, you had way more opportunity. You shot like 38%. You just got the chuck. I ain't hating. But nigga, it wasn't like...
The internet erupted. Reddit threads popped off with takes like Jennings peaked in Game 7 of his rookie year, and Teague had the better NBA career, no question. Well, there's more into what could have been, saying if Jennings never tore his Achilles, he might have made an all-star team, or he had the most confidence of any player who never really improved after year 2. Eventually, the beef became less about Jennings versus Teague, and more about Jennings versus reality. This idea that no matter how much he tried to reclaim the narrative that he's a killer, the stats and accomplishments just didn't stack up. Teague, while never as flashy as B. Jennings, made an all-star team, was the starting point guard for a 60-win Hawks team, and played meaningful playoff basketball. Jennings, despite his electric game and massive fan base, never quite crossed that threshold from YouTube star to NBA star. I mean, maybe in a one-on-one game Jennings can beat whoever, but in terms of a 5-on-5 talent, we had hundreds of games to go off, and to claim better than Drew Holiday is mental, better than Teague is crazy, and even better than Ty Lawson kinda feels wrong. And yet, even with the way his career turned out, there's still a deep appreciation for what Brandon Jennings represented. He was confidence personified, an AAU legend who carried himself like he belonged in the Hall of Fame, even if the numbers didn't agree. He was a prototype for the modern hoop mixtape era players like Trae Young, Mikey Williams, and even LaMelo Ball. He helped redefine how young talent is scouted, hyped, and evaluated. So maybe he didn't become the next Iverson with a better three-point jumper, and maybe he didn't end up leaving a major impact on the game. But ask anyone who saw him at Oak Hill, or who watched that 55-point performance, who felt that hype when he had the ball in his hands. Brandon Jennings was that guy, even if just for a split second. And sometimes, that moment is enough to make someone unforgettable. But I still got Teague in a game to 15. If you're watching this right now, there's an 85% chance that you're not subscribed to the channel, so make sure to change that for me. It only takes a second, and we're trying to hit 100K by the end of the summer. Thank you guys for watching. Other than having one of the grossest condiments and juice combinations possible as a name, this man made sure that everyone knew it. As from the time he was in 7th grade, he was already scoring over 20 points per game at the varsity level and getting attention from national magazines and scouts. By 8th grade, people were legit already calling him the next LeBron or the next Kobe Bryant, and he was seen as a future NBA superstar before he even started high school. At North College Hill High School in Ohio, he completely dominated, averaging 28 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists per game, all while leading his team to back-to-back state championships. His talent, size, and skill made him a national celebrity in the basketball world. He was 6'5", athletic, confident, and had the kind of polished game that made it look like he was a 99 overall in 2K, crushing a bunch of squeaker brown shirts in the park. His highlights were everywhere online, even during the internet's infancy, and people would pack gyms just to watch him play. He was ranked the #1 player in the country by many, and was basically a lock to make the NBA, after taking the reins as the next chosen one of high school basketball when LeBron took the leap into the NBA. Everyone thought that OJ Mayo would be an all-star one day. When the NBA changed the rules to require players to be 1 year removed from high school, Mayo went to USC for 1 season and still played well, averaging over 20 points per game. After that, he entered the 2008 NBA draft and was picked 3rd overall by the Minnesota Timberwolves, though he was immediately traded to the Memphis Grizzlies for Kevin Love. At that moment, it seemed like all the hype had been real. He was really going to take over the NBA. In his rookie season with the Grizzlies, OJ looked promising. He averaged 18.5 points per game and finished 2nd in Rookie of the Year voting behind only Derrick Rose. His shooting numbers were solid too, 45% from the field and 38% from deep. For a while, it looked like Mayo was going to become the star that everyone expected, but after his first 2 seasons, things started to quietly go downhill. His role on the team changed, his scoring dropped, and he was moved to the bench. By his 3rd season, he was only averaging about 11 points per game, and his shooting wasn't as sharp as it was when he was scoring more in the starting lineup. Well, he had a brief comeback with the Dallas Mavericks in the 2012-2013 season, averaging over 15 points per game and having some big scoring nights. It just didn't last. He signed with the Milwaukee Bucks afterwards, but his performance continued to decline. He dealt with injuries, conditioning issues, and soon was barely making an impact. Then, in 2016, things got much worse for him, as he got caught with some performance-enhancing drugs in a test that he later claimed was from him abusing painkillers. Not the greatest look for an NBA pro. He had already been suspended for 10 games back in 2011 for testing positive for another banned substance, but the one in 2016 was much more serious. So the NBA and Adam Silver thought he deserved a 2-year ban, which pretty much ended his career in the league altogether. But yet, Ja Morant is still waving around a 9 to a bunch of fans on IG. He tried to make a comeback in later years, playing overseas in places like China and Taiwan, but he never made an official return to the NBA. Looking back at his stats, Mayo's NBA career wasn't a total disaster. He averaged 14 points, 3 assists, and 3 rebounds per game over 8 years, but for someone who came to the league with so much hype and potential, it was a massive disappointment. He never made an all-star team, never led a team deep into the playoffs, and didn't live up to the sky-high expectations people had for him. Basketball fans online often said that Mayo looked great early on because he was older and stronger than most of the players he was competing against in high school, and by the time he reached the NBA, everyone else had caught up. And really, there was no element of his game that really stood out. Many say he never really developed his game after high school. He didn't improve his ball handling, his defense, or his decision making, and once his athletic edge was gone, other than a jump shot that wasn't top of the line, there really wasn't much left. OJ Mayo just blended in with the pack until he was lost for life. Shabazz Muhammad was pretty much just a draft bust in the NBA who rode the bench for the Timberwolves before guys like Andrew Wiggins and Zach LaVine eventually took his spot. Looking back, there's really not that much that Shabazz is remembered for in the league, outside of getting exposed for lying about his age, which in hindsight probably helped him even get to the NBA in the first place. But once upon a time, long before the disappointment, Shabazz was being talked about as a once-in-a-generation talent. As a 6'6" wing at Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, Shabazz was an absolute problem. He was strong, bouncy, aggressive, and had the type of motor that made coaches drool. By his junior year, he had already claimed the title of the best player in Nevada, and by his senior year, he had skyrocketed to the #1 player in the entire country, and it wasn't hard to see why. When the world saw him in the dunk contest jumping over dudes, catching self-lobs off the glass, and flying through the air like he was built in a lab, it felt like we were watching the next great scorer. But it wasn't just the athleticism. Shabazz had a really solid lower body base that he exploded off of. A decently polished post game for a high school wing, and a smooth lefty jumper that looked effortless and quick. He played with a fiery intensity that made it feel like he was always trying to drop 30. Between the mixtapes, the rankings, and the eye test, people genuinely believed this guy was going to be special. Greg Anthony even called him a generational talent, and to be fair, he wasn't alone. Most people agreed, but man, Shabazz really had us tricked all along. Despite all the athleticism, despite all the scoring instincts, and despite all the hype, it turns out most of what we saw was a carefully crafted illusion, boosted heavily by the fact, by unbeknownst to everyone, Shabazz was older than most of his competition. He wasn't some 17 or 18-year-old prodigy, he was a 20-year-old senior bullying younger kids with his physicality. Once he left the world and stepped into college and the NBA, the difference became clear fast. To his credit, Shabazz did put up decent numbers at UCLA, he scored the ball well, and compared to most high school stars, that alone puts him in rare air. But when he got to the NBA, it was a rude awakening. The Timberwolves were absolutely awful at the time, and they handed him a pretty long leash, letting him do just about whatever he wanted to on the floor, but it didn't take long to realize that this guy on an NBA level was brutal. Shabazz was one of the biggest black holes on offense that I've ever seen in the NBA. If the ball touched his hands, it wasn't coming back. His only real move was to drop his head, bulldoze into the lane with his dominant left hand, and throw up a contested shot, usually into a wall of defenders. When he got all the way to the rim, sure he could finish pretty well, but outside of that, his shot was streaky, his handle was shaky, and his decision making was honestly just awful, dude. He didn't really stretch the floor super well, didn't create for others, and on defense he was a liability. He struggled with rotations, wasn't quick laterally, and just didn't seem to care on that end. Then came the 2013 scandal. It was revealed that Shabazz and his father had been lying about his age for years, and suddenly everything kind of made more sense. The man we thought was dominating as a teenager had actually been 2 years older than most of his competition, giving him a huge physical edge, but not much in the way of real skill development. It wasn't so much the polished scorer as he was just older, stronger, and more aggressive than anyone else in high school. Once that advantage disappeared, so did the illusion. In the end, Shabazz didn't just flame out, he exposed a real flaw in how talent gets evaluated. We got sold on mixtapes, dunks, and hype, and forgot to notice that he wasn't evolving. But hey, he stacked millions, carved out a few years in the NBA, and left behind a pretty legendary high school tape. For that alone, maybe you just gotta tip the hat and say he finessed the system better than most ever will. Patrick Beverley is known today as a defensive menace, and to some, a straight-up dirty player. But before all his antics and hard fouls, Pat Bev was known as something completely different. Unguardable. In high school, Beverley didn't just play hard, he played insane. He burst into the national scene by putting up mind-melting averages of 37 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 8 steals per game. 8 steals per game. He was harassing guards the full length of the court, ripping the ball like it belonged to him, but it wasn't just defense. He was giving buckets. Fast as hell, blowing by defenders, finishing tough layups like Kyrie Irving, and even dunking on people's heads. On the perimeter, he was dancing, dropping ankles, hitting pull-ups, drilling deep threes right in defenders' faces. Beverley ran the Chicago basketball scene, which is no small feat considering the talent coming out of that city. His team went 31-2, and Pat was a generational star. What really made him a legend was his showdown with Derrick Rose. At the time, Rose wasn't just the top player in Chicago. He was the top guard in the country. Pat Bev might have been stuffing the stat sheet, but D Rose was running with Simeon, a certified powerhouse, putting up a smooth 25-9-9 with 3 steals a night. On paper, this looked like a mismatch, but nobody told Pat Bev that. In Rose's own words, they got smacked. Marshall blew out Simeon by 20 points, and in that head-to-head matchup, Pat Bev cooked him, 36 points to Rose's 19. He might be known now for the trash-talking defense, but make no mistake, Patrick Beverley was always a nightmare for guards from day one. Just when you thought the high school hype machine had reached its peak, bam, in slides Michael Beasley like the final boss of high school basketball. But here's the thing about Beasley. He didn't need to shout or talk crazy to make you pay attention. His game really did do the talking, and it spoke in smooth pull-up jump shots, effortless lefty finishes, and grown man rebounds over guys who looked like they were still figuring out their driver's license test. Beasley wasn't just a good player in high school, he was a force of nature. He was the kind of dude that could casually drop 30 and 20 in a national game and walk off the court smiling like he just beat you in Connect 4. In his senior year at Notre Dame Prep, he averaged 28 points, 16 rebounds, and over 4 blocks per game, dominating every matchup like he was in the wrong league. ESPN Rivals scouts, everyone had him at number 1 in the 2007 class. People forget, but this was the same class as Derrick Rose, James Harden, Blake Griffin, Kevin Love. He was ranked above all of them. That's how real it was. Beasley wasn't just thought of as a solid young player, he was expected to be a major problem for years to come. With a smooth lefty jump shot that looked textbook, but really just felt accessory, Michael Beasley was a versatile two-way combo forward threat. Through isolating the mid-post or out on the perimeter, running in transition, or playing a bit of pick and pop or pick and roll, Beasley could score the ball insanely well on all 3 levels. He was athletic as all hell, which allowed him to not only get up and down and finish well, but crash the glass like his life depended on it and protect the tin like a pro. Then came Kansas State, and Beasley went absolutely nuclear. As just a freshman, he put up 26 points and 12 rebounds per game, nearly leading the NCAA in both categories. 28 double-doubles in 33 games. He was wrecking Big 12 competition like it was absolutely nothing. It wasn't just the stats, it was how he did it. He'd face up a defender, jab, pull up, splash. You want a hezzy pull up, he's got that too. He had guard skills and a power forward body with footwork and touch most veterans dreamed of. He could shoot the 3, score in the mid-range, dominate in the post, and also crash the boards like a true big. Beasley was a walking mismatch. You couldn't double him fast enough. Beasley had honestly looked like a future MVP. When the 2008 NBA draft came around, there were real debates about who should go number 1, Rose or Beasley. Derrick Rose was the floor general, the athletic freak, but Beasley, he looked like a guaranteed 25 and 10 every night for the next 10 years. Miami took him with the number 2 overall pick, and fans were hyped. The Heat had Dwayne Wade, and now they had a bucket-getting monster to pair with him. It was supposed to be the beginning of something special. But then, slowly, things started to slip. Beasley's rookie season was good, not great, but definitely good. He averaged 14 and 5 off the bench, shooting 47% from the field. Solid numbers for a rookie, especially one adjusting to a bench role. But something always felt off. The consistency wasn't there. One night he'd have that 25 and look unstoppable, and the next he'd disappear into foul trouble or take some dumbass mid-range jumper with 17 seconds on the clock. He moved like the game came easy, but maybe a bit too easy. He didn't always lock in on defense, he didn't play within the system, coaches loved his talent, but didn't always trust his focus. In 2010, Miami traded him to Minnesota to make room for the formation of the Big Three. Beasley had just become the odd man out before he ever got a real shot. In Minnesota, he had his best year statistically, putting up 19 points and 5.6 rebounds a game in 2011. It looked for a moment like he might turn that corner, but again, the inconsistency returned. His defense never improved, his effort came and went, his talent was always there, but the motor was less so. After that, his career turned into a fucking treacherous journey, as he jumped from team to team in the league, heading over to China to play some ball, only to end up coming back to the league, only to decide he wanted to go back to China again. Beasley was too good to be out of a job, but not consistent enough to be a key part of a winning team. He'd come in, get hot for a week, score in bunches, and then vanish. Fans started calling him the ultimate hooper, not a basketball player, meaning, yeah, he could play, but he couldn't always fit in a legitimate rotation. He averaged a respectable 12 points per game in the NBA on 46% shooting, and his scoring touch never really went away. You give Beasley the ball in the elbow, he'll still get you a bucket about half the time. But teams wanted more than just scoring that was a bit inefficient. They wanted defense, discipline, energy, and Beasley never even came close. He had the off-court issues as well, fines, suspensions, all that jazz. He once brought the wrong shorts to a Lakers game. Another time he tried to check into a game without taking off his warm-ups. It became part of the Michael Beasley experience. Brilliant, hilarious, frustrating, and confusing all at once. But here's the thing, no matter how up and down his career was, fans loved watching him play. Beasley was pure talent. He moved like silk, his jumper was smooth, effortless, his footwork in the post, textbook. He had that what-if energy. You always felt like if he just put down the za for a minute and locked in, he could drop 30 on anybody. And maybe that's why his story hit so differently. Because we saw it, we saw the high school dominance, we saw the college greatness, we saw flashes in the NBA, and yet, it never turned into what it could have been. Not because he didn't have the tools, but maybe because he never found the right environment, or maybe because he couldn't get out of his own way. Michael Beasley wasn't a bust. He played over 600 NBA games. He scored nearly 6,000 points. He made millions of dollars, and he had a solid career. But for someone who was once seen as the most talented player in his class above Derrick Rose, James Harden, and Kevin Love, it feels like a story that was never fully written. A mixtape that stopped midway, and a masterpiece that never got finished. And if you were following the high school basketball scene in the 2000s, you know the name Sebastian Telfair rang out like a siren in the streets of New York City. Coney Island's own, the kid who was supposed to carry the torch from Stephon Marbury straight into NBA greatness. Telfair wasn't just nice, he was legendary in high school. At Abraham Lincoln High, the same place Marbury came from, Bassey was a walking highlight reel, slicing through defenses, dropping no-look dimes, pulling up from anywhere, and winning games with straight swagger. He was tiny by NBA standards, standing about 6 feet tall with a rail-thin frame, but his handle was elite, his court vision was sharp, and he had that gritty NYC confidence that made you believe he could take on anybody, anywhere. He finished high school with over 2,700 points, led Lincoln to 3 titles, and was named New York's Mr. Basketball. The hype was insane at this time. He became the first point guard to jump from high school straight to the NBA, skipping college and signing a whopping $15 million shoe deal with Adidas before he ever stepped foot on the NBA court. This man even had a documentary made about him before his draft night even happened. He was supposed to be the next great point guard of the NBA, which was not quite how it turned out. When he got to the league, It was like a switch had flipped or something. Drafted 13th overall in 2004 by the Portland Trail Blazers, Telfair's NBA career never really took off. He never averaged more than 10 points or 5 assists per game in a single season, despite having the green light from coaches and even starting games early on, and getting chances in places like Boston, Minnesota, Phoenix, and Cleveland. It always felt like he was just there. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't impactful either. He was small, so he had struggled defensively, couldn't finish at the rim like he used to in high school against the elite gritty lockdown bigs of the early 2000s, and didn't shoot the ball well enough to make up for it. He bounced around the league like a journeyman, playing for 8 teams in 9th season that even put my man Ish Smith to shame. The Jordan of all journeymen, and like the legendary Ish Smith, he never truly found a real home and was never given much of a chance after he proved to GMs that he was not the same dude he was back in high school. And while he stayed in the league longer than people realize, playing over 500 games, his career averages of 7.4 points and 3.5 assists just weren't what the world expected from a kid who once graced the cover of Slam magazine alongside LeBron James. His name became more known for off-court trouble than on-court success, especially later when he was arrested multiple times on gun charges, including a wild 2017 arrest that ended with police finding multiple loaded weapons, a bulletproof vest, and some Mary Jane in his whip. It was like the legend of Telfair had unraveled completely. Bro would rather suit up for war than a goddamn basketball game. And then there was Austin Rivers, the YouTube prodigy, the daddy's boy of a legendary coach and doc who played like he had legit zero respect for anybody on the court. And in high school, he didn't need to. Austin wasn't just good, he was tiers above the competition. A one-man show with an attitude, a jumper, and a killer instinct that made him look like a future franchise player at just 17 years old. At Winter Park High School in Florida, Rivers became a household name before he even hit college, torching defenders in ways that didn't seem fair. He had that signature snatchback crossover into a long, smooth 3-ball that seemed to float in slow motion, and his confidence was off the charts. Every time he pulled up, it felt like the gym froze. His Ball is Life mixtape is still talked about today as one of the greatest ever made. Pure chaos in motion, step backs, dunks, buckets from the logo. It was like watching a teenage James Harden if you listened to NBA Youngboy or Lil Xan or some shit before every game. Just a menace. He was averaging over 28 a game in his senior year, made the Mickey D's All-American game, and was the number 1 ranked shooting guard in the country. On the AAU circuit, he was even nastier, dropping 40 pieces on the regular and putting high-level recruits in blenders. He wasn't just dominating, he was embarrassing people, calling game before the shot left his hands. People thought he was the next big scoring guard, somewhere between Gilbert Arenas without the Glock and a young Steph Curry with a little bit of villain energy thrown in. And to be fair, Rivers wasn't a bust. He just never became that guy. He went to Duke, hit one of the most famous shots in basketball against UNC in Chapel Hill, but even there, he wasn't the top dog every night. Then he went 10th overall in the 2012 draft to the New Orleans Hornets, and people thought he might start lighting it up right away alongside Anthony Davis, but holy fuck, that rookie season was rough. He averaged 6 points a game and shot under 40% from the field, and looked helpless trying to finish at the rim against NBA-level size and speed. As his career went on, he found his role playing solid defense, being a streaky shooter, a decent backup combo guard who could come in and bring some energy off the bench. But he never once looked like the killer from Winter Park or the AAU scene. He bounced around the league, basically finishing the NBA rainbow, and to his credit, he stuck around. He played over 700 games, averaged around 9 points, and had some memorable moments, like that one time with the Rockets where he hit clutch threes in the playoffs, or when he waved off his own dad while playing for the opposing team. That stuff was gold, but in terms of stardom, it never came. The swagger from the high school tapes never quite showed up in the same way in the pros. The handle was still tight, the jumper was still okay, but the explosion, the takeover, the agility, sadly it just never translated against elite NBA defenders and NBA system. And that's what made Rivers such a fascinating case. He was must-watch TV in high school, one of the first viral stars of the mixtape era, a kid who looked like he was crafted in a lab to score at will. But in the NBA, he became something much quieter. Reliable, respected, and ultimately just average. But average is still great. I mean, that's what my girl always tells me. He's still carved out a career a lot of players would literally kill for. But for those who remember those high school tapes, it always felt like there was another level that never got unlocked. Now in 2025, Rivers still hasn't officially retired. Technically, he's a free agent available for teams to sign, but at this point, it feels like even he knows that calls aren't going to be coming. He's been out of the league since 2023, and though he's dropped hints here and there about still wanting to play, the game might have moved on. Lately, he's been popping up more and more on ESPN, doing analyst work, breaking down games, and honestly, he's not that bad at it. He's sharp, honest, and funny with that same edge he played with, but now it's pointed at the camera instead of defenders. At the end of the day, if there's one thing that every player mentioned shares, it's that they were that guy at one point in high school. Coaches, scouts, sneaker reps, and everybody wanted a piece. To their classmates, they were future NBA stars. To their city, they were legends in the making. And in the moments, it seems true. But here's the thing. Basketball is a funny way of humbling even the most gifted. The truth is, raw talents may open the door, but it's not what keeps you in the room. At some point, the game stops being about who can jump the highest or who has the best crossover. It becomes a test of resilience, discipline, and the willingness to evolve. It's about who can show up every day and grind, who can take criticism without folding, and who can turn setbacks into fuel instead of excuses. Maturity truly matters. The league doesn't care who had the craziest high school mixtape. It cares who's putting in the work at 6 in the morning, who's studying film after practice, who's making the right reads with 30 seconds left in a tied game. The NBA doesn't run on potential alone. It's built on grown men who can deliver under pressure night after night for years to come. That's the real difference between being that guy in high school and being that guy in the NBA. Thank you for watching if you made it this far, and I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out.